Hi, you're listening to Driven E-commerce at Work, the podcast where we bring in conversations with the e-commerce experts. We also put together some interesting content from different places, including our monthly e-sessions, speaker series, and anything that's related to e-commerce for manufacturing and distribution. If you're here for the first time, I would highly encourage you to go and subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Driven E-commerce at Work. Our guest today is David Fish. He's the founder and CEO of CuriosityCX, a consumer research and customer experience consultancy company. He has launched over 50 large-scale CX programs across multiple industries, and his prior experiences include American Savings Bank, Toyota, Marriott CX, more. He's also an adjunct professor at University of Arkansas and advisor at Michigan State University. Thanks for being a guest on our show, Dave. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Sheila.
Cool. Good morning. How's the week going so far?
We're early, so far so good. It's Monday at 9:30 or 9 o'clock. So we're off to a good start.
Okay, perfect. So how long are you working in home? Is this like new for you, this pandemic situation, working from home and the things?
No, I've worked from home for I don't know, close to 15 years or so. And so no, this isn't new to me at all. What is new is having until recently my entire family here with me. So that's the new part of it, but we're managing quite well.
Okay. So one thing I was wondering is about, when I looked at your education, so you have a phenomenal career in the customer experience, right? You also have a huge interest in psychology. You did your bachelor's in psychology and master's in applied psychology. And you also, you actually didn't stop there, right? You got a doctorate in applied psychology and organizational behavior, right? So where did this, come from and how it helped shaping your career?
Yeah, for me, I always enjoy the gray. So a lot of people like to be able to solve a math problem and take satisfaction in that and having everything kind of in order. I like the areas that are not easy to solve, not easy to understand, and always I'm interested around what's around the next quarter. So, and that's human behavior, right? You don't really ever know, completely what someone's going to do, but it's kind of fun to try to figure out what are those things that make people do what they do. And so every time I do a study and talk to someone qualitatively, I'm learning something new that I didn't know before. Or every time I analyze a data set, it's like opening a brand new book, right? A mystery book. You don't know what you're going to really find. You have some hypotheses about what's in there, but you never really know until you start looking at it. And so that's really what's driven my curiosity over the years is what's around the corner, and the fact that it's not always solvable, right? It's just an ongoing sort of investigation. It's a lot of fun. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Okay, cool. So I actually read your CX article, I guess, the one that you posted on your blog. So you mentioned about how the chocolate box unboxing was, ruined by the company when you actually ordered for your kids, right? So you also talked about the packaging of Gillette and Harris, and how companies like Apple and Cox Communications are making the unboxing experience simple, especially from the consumer point of view.
Yeah.
I think we're going more and more digital in the past couple of months. So other than this packaging sort of thing, so what are some of the customer experience mistakes that you see in the e-commerce brands are making actually?
Yeah, I think some e-commerce does a wonderful job, and in fact, the rest of the other industries can really learn from them in terms of making it super simple. And so that's it's that first click. CRM and e-marketers know that getting someone to make one small behavior is the key to getting them to make larger behavioral commitments into the future. So those companies that do a really good job of making it as simple as possible, and having that mystery, like that's one of the drivers of human behavior is what's around the corner. And so should I click on this? What am I going to learn? What am I going to get out of it? What's around the corner? And so those are the companies that do really well, is make it simple. The companies that don't do it well, or the mistakes from an e-commerce standpoint, is making it complicated. It's like, you go in and like multiple sign-ons is a great example of, or complicated passwords to log in, or something like Amazon does a terrific job right at the end. Just swipe and you buy. They take all the friction out of buying. They do a wonderful job of, you could look here, see what you want. They'll give you suggestions for what other things you might need related to that, or even not. And then to buy, you literally just swipe. So I think, like I said, it's removing the friction, but it's also creating a sense of wonder and interest, if appropriate. Some things it's kind of hard to do with paying your water bill, but other things, if you're selling something, you must have a passion around it. It's inspiring folks to be passionate about it as well. So I think those are some of the magic.
Hmm. Okay. So to me, I still see, there are gaps in the shipping. It's high time. We've been, waiting for a moment like this. Consumers are now ready to, buy from the global stores. Due to the fact that, most of the online stores displays, out of stock products.
Yeah.
So when you're getting global visits, I wonder, why still, companies are not ready to ship to the other countries. I mean, other than the USA. I was browsing for some products, and I realized only, during the checkout or cart page, there is no international shipping.
Yeah.
So do you think a global shipping would actually help the e-commerce business right now, or how do you see that from the e-commerce or the consumer perspective?
Yeah. No, I think most consumers don't really care where it comes from. To be honest with you, I mean, they'll tell you, if you ask people, there'll be some sentiment and nationalism about point of origin. But I think more or less, American consumers at least are open to global commerce, and as long as it's from a verified freight forwarder or shipping provider, that they feel comfortable with that. And I think you see just a ton of evidence. I mean, this virus originated in China, yet our commerce with China, at least for consumer durables, is not slowed down. That's a lot of those masks that are flowing into the U.S. on Amazon and other sites are originating in China, and I'm sure that folks are ordering those. So I do think, to answer your question, that global shipping piece of it is really important, and people are willing to. I think the other thing too is, and maybe you touched on this, is the waiting part of it. Um, Amazon and Grubhub and all these other companies have changed Americans' expectation around wait time, and it's not just for Amazon and Grubhub and Uber Eats. It's once you have expectation for things coming, quickly, that's reset across all the categories. So they don't have a lot of Americans don't have a lot of patience for shippers who are going to be slow. Now that could vary by category. If you're selling very high end things, or things that are very hard to find, or like, say, for furniture, which is expensive to ship, people are willing to do that trade-off, I think, a bit more. But for most cases, people want it now, and that's how you beat brick and mortar, right? Can I wait for a day, and that overcomes the hassle of me having to go down to my local superstore, and go into the crowds of people with face masks on, and maybe a few not, and that whole safety issue coming into play too, which I think is also driving a lot of the e-commerce that you see going on.
Yeah. And from a consumer standpoint, how do you think the e-commerce brands can actually reduce the product returns? I've seen Mattress Company offering 100-day free trial. So if you don't like the product, you can simply return the product and then request a refund. Companies like this, they do this because they have a strong belief in the product. But I'm just curious, I'm trying to understand. So what makes a consumer return their product?
Yeah, so just extreme dissatisfaction. it's kind of a hassle to return things. And so like the mattress companies, they believe in their product, but think about getting a mattress delivered to your house, right? Now you have to get it back to them. So if you don't like them, you have to get that, and you don't have a bed to sleep on anymore, by the way. So it's one of those things, like on the face of it, it seems like a risky move by a mattress company to do, but in reality, I don't have the data, but I would suspect that there's very, very few people, even a few that are kind of moderately satisfied, that says, I'm going to ship this thing back. So I think the other thing, though, for smaller products, if you ever do like a return on like an Amazon, they make it really easy, right? You just, you literally, they don't even ask questions half the time. They just print the slip up, put it on the package, and go down to your local, FedEx or UPS and give it to them. And they make returns really easy. So I think those two pieces of it, again, that's a friction piece, right? But one is the number of returns that are done, I think in some categories is quite low. But in others, the retailer or the e-commerce provider makes it easy. And then the other thing around that is in the case of fitting, right? So in the case of clothes or anything, shirts, shoes, anything that you could put on the site that will help them really figure out, what is this and how does it fit? What does it look like? And so the e-commerce part of it, and really accurately displaying the product and FAQs, and just giving them as much information as possible so that when they do receive it, they're not confused. I'll give you an example. So I recently bought a guitar, not the one back there, but I bought a Martin guitar, and I was like, this looks really nice. It was cheap, for Martin guitars are expensive. So it came in the mail. I opened it up, and it was a MIDI guitar. I didn't know they made MIDI guitars, but it was like this big. And I was like, I don't want a MIDI guitar, And if I read the fine print a little more closely, I would have noticed that it was a MIDI guitar, but it wasn't. So I sent it back. So that's another one where, and it's free shipping, free return. So it cost Martin Guitars or whoever was selling it money that they probably didn't need to have spent if they could have been a little more clear on what the specifications of the product were in the first place.
And I think I've also seen consumers, I mean, some of my friends and colleagues, so they used to do this sort of research. They still look at the e-commerce website, they just browse them, do some competition analysis, and then once they do all these things, they just come back to Amazon and they just order there. I'm sure why. I mean, it's just because they have this sort of, like you said, they have this one-day delivery, and then you have this like a very simple return process. They don't even ask you questions. Hey, if you don't like it, just return. That's it, right?
Yeah, it's super nice. That's another thing you bring up too, is like some e-commerce sites are like big retailers, for example, who sell a lot of different products. The better ones in e-commerce are putting like grids together for customers. So they don't have to they're making the research process easier. So they don't have to go through and kind of figure out, okay, well, this has this much and this says this much. Why not make it easier for the consumer and just put it into a grid, okay? So it's this big or this small or this much horsepower or this much wattage or whatever it is. And then you can just line up side by side so the consumer can look across and make an apples to apples comparison without having to kind of read through and do a lot of research. So again, we're just making it easier for them to shop and select what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so product survey has been considered, one of the oldest marketing activities to learn more about the audiences and buying behavior. But is that really the case? I mean, do consumers really like those surveys?
Oh, no, they don't. The trick is to not make it a survey, right? If you can. So when we go out and we talk with people, I'm having a conversation just like I'm having with you. We chat in living rooms, and nowadays it's via Zoom, but you get a lot of really good information just by talking with people. And but that's also not enough. We know that people don't always tell the truth, and they're not trying to lie. Sometimes they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing, and so you have to make observations about why they're doing that. And sometimes, that's called ethnography. So you go along with them and kind of just watch their behaviors. And you might notice they do something, and you say, "Why do you do that?" And they're like, I don't know. And then so you just kind of go into these five whys and try to kind of figure out why people do what they do, um, by sometimes just observing them. And they leave evidence as well, around behavior. So you might notice a button that's, sort of discolored because so many people are using it, or one side of a stairwell that's more worn than another. And it's sort of like a consumer forensics, right? What did they leave behind? But there's also a lot of behavioral data, so we could look at purchase patterns and derive preferences from purchase patterns. And then there is the good old fashioned survey, and sometimes you have to ask, for what you're doing, you do have to send out a survey. So in those cases, what I try to do is make it, one, interesting, two, as short as possible, and three, make it worth their while. So give them something in return for their time, whether that's cash or prizes or whatever. And as long as that reciprocity is there, or it could be information even. So as long as that reciprocity is there and it's a fair trade for information for something, whether that's a social interaction or money or information, then you get some good data from people. The ones that do it poorly are the annoying phone call you get during dinner with a 15-minute survey, or the 8-page written survey, or the 15-minute online survey that you have to do. And it's very apparent that the researcher just doesn't really care about you. They want their questions answered, and the questions are not maybe that good or hard to answer, or you don't know you don't have the knowledge to answer the questions. So it's one of those things that looks simple, that is, it's easy to screw up. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing that everyone says is, so go and look at the places where your customers are instead of sending surveys. Maybe you can just go and look at the posts they're doing on the social media. You can try to engage with them, like create content from there, but at the same time, you can get feedback from there. And I think you
yeah,
have to listen to customer calls as well. It's not just about the surveys. I mean, you cannot ask for more time from the customer,
yeah,
right?
that's great. And it's like, you know, people, like, they'll say, well, I hate surveys, but then we have Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. People love to share their opinions. They love to talk about themselves. So it's just finding the right medium, the right way to get them to talk about what they want to talk about. I mean, if you just bought a brand new guitar, a brand new car, you want to tell others. And that's why ratings work so well. It's like the people, they feel like they want to be an expert. They want to be heard. They want other people. They want to help people in some cases make better decisions. So the rating sites work fairly well as long as they're verified customers. So
Yeah.
fortunately, in some cases, they can get game too. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And not every company has a customer experience team. I guess to go one step further, I would say some of them don't even have the customer success team either. So why having an internal customer experience team is really important, and how does it actually differ from the typical customer success process or the team?
yeah, so with customer success, I mean, that definition varies by industry, but usually that's the implementation team, right? And they're there to get a job done, and install a piece of software or whatever it is they're charged with doing, and they do a good job. But customer experience teams within organizations are pretty important, in that they help coordinate and provide some kind of governance. So in order to have an end-to-end customer experience, someone has to sit down and say, here's what the customer wants, and here's what we should design to from an experience design standpoint. And so that transcends marketing, it transcends operations, sales, product design. It really is a meta function of the organization, and that you have to make all these different functions work together and coordinate with one another. And so the customer experience team isn't charged with doing everything. They're charged with helping these functional departments work effectively together to create a friction-free experience as a baseline. And then from there, how can we improve the experience holistically? And so, like, by example, a company that just knocks out of the park has been Disney Resorts. and their theme parks. And every little aspect of that experience is orchestrated and purposely designed. Characters stay in character. You don't see any trash ever on the ground. Everything is working together, including the merchandise, the experience, what they sell, everything. And it's just beautifully done. And that's not by accident. There's two pieces that really makes it work well. One is the people that they hire and the philosophy that's kind of the culture that's just embedded within. And the other piece of it is they do have a coordinating force that helps coordinate that overall experience and think of it holistically and make sure it all works together. So yeah, as organizations grow in size, early on, it's easy for me, for example, to control my customer experience because it's just me and a few other people, or a local hardware store because the owner's there and maybe 2 or 3 other employees. When that gets difficult is when we get larger and we have multiple locations, and now we have to coordinate one vision across a larger organization. And so it's not until organizations get to, maybe, several, several thousand customers or more, and maybe several thousand employees or more that they really need to start thinking about implementing something like this. Otherwise, you can kind of just do it organically. It just happens organically.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that every CMO, been telling lately is, so your sales is directly proportional to the value you actually bring into your audience or maybe, the customers. So the more value you bring into their life, the more conversion you can actually expect. So how does this actually applicable to the online business? I mean, let's say from the consumer standpoint, can you tell us what's that one or two thing that's going to convert the first time visitor into a buyer, right? I mean, what do consumers expect when they visit a homepage of an online store?
Yeah, I think it's very clearly communicate what it is that the value that you're providing. And so that one, like I said before, make it simple, make it clear, make it really interesting and unique, lure them in, not in a negative way, but invite them in. So the best ones I've seen are just super, this is what they sell, this is what it does. There's evidence that whatever they're claiming it does, it works, it's unique, it's different. And that's how you get them into in there the first time. Of course, the other thing is SEO, right? So you want to be high on that first search page. A lot of search is done for retail. I forget the statistic, but it's quite high. The first stop that people make for buying anything is Amazon. They don't even go to Google. They just go straight to Amazon, put in search terms. So Amazon owns a lot of search right now. So that's if you have a storefront or whatever, that's a consideration too. So I think those are the things you want to do. And then you mentioned e-tailing. So I think it's important to understand that if you are an e-commerce, you're an e-commerce store, but you're more than that, right? You have customer support obligations. It's a big frustration for startups is like you buy these new sunglasses and you can't get a hold of anyone to save your life from a customer support standpoint. And I understand the reasons for doing that is to reduce overhead and keeping costs down. But it becomes to a point of the ridiculous where like, who is this person? Like I bought a pair of headphones once and they didn't work that well. And I could literally not find anyone in that company or even who owned the company because I want them replaced. And so that's understanding that you're selling things, but you have as an organization, you have an obligation to also provide that total experience. So if someone comes in, buys something, you send it to them, they use it, they might have questions or want to return it. It's owning the entire thing, not just that e-commerce piece of it, which is important, but just one piece of the overall experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when it comes to content creation and the content marketing strategy, everyone has their own way of doing it. But when it comes to creating and the brand identity, I mean, what type of content actually works? I mean, everyone is talking about the social media marketing strategy and offering value to the audience. But from a consumer standpoint, what an e-commerce business should actually do to create that brand for their business?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One is, really having a simple and clear understanding of what it is that you're selling. Like I mentioned before, that brand identity, um, having emotional appeal if possible. So we know that emotional connections are very powerful, and people um, remembering what you do. Now in some verticals that's might be challenging, but you can connect it to happy memories or sad memories or whatever those things are. That's gonna create a more powerful brand. Uniqueness. So how do you stand out? So no one ever. There's no such thing as timid marketing, right? You have to be bold. You have to take a stand and do, especially if you're small, be even controversial. Those are the things. So I think some people, when they start a business, they want to pick a logo that looks like other people's logos, or pick a color or a style because it's consistent. That's a great way to be forgettable. You don't want to be part of the pack. You want to stand out. And so just be different, be weird, if possible. And depending on what you're doing, you don't want to offend too many people, but sometimes you have to take risks to be successful. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. So the way that businesses do marketing has changed over the past couple of years. I mean, everyone is trying to bring in the human side of their company. Companies themselves are promoting their employees to build personal branding, which is what going to bring in value because the customers wanted to see who the real face is behind that brand, right? So in this scenario, how do you see the chatbots? Does chatbot serving the right purpose, and I mean, does it really add value to the consumer?
Yeah, no, I think chatbots all the rage, right, for the last couple of years anyway. But um, they I think they work really well, especially with younger audiences. So a couple things to think about. One, who's your audience? The generation in front of me likes to talk on the phone. Gen Xers, some Gen Yers, emailers. The current generation, text. That's what they do in chat. That's cool. So you want to make sure you're lining up your modalities of customer support and communication with preferences of what your customers want. So that's the first thing. The second thing on chatbots specifically, the nice thing about chatbots is, one, as long as you're transparent you have a chatbot with your customers, and they're able to answer limited questions, people are fine with that. They're like, okay, I just need this basic information. But the idea that you can, again, this idea that consumers can opt to kind of get to that next level, to easily get to a human being, is really important. So as far as flipping it around, looking at the consumer or the company side of the equation, you have one person who can maybe take on 3, 4, 5 different inquiries all at the same time. So it's really quite nice from an efficiency standpoint, and able to kind of maintain and keep multiple inquiries going all at the same time. And I think that's the allure. So in general, I think it works pretty well. Some of the mistakes on chatbots that people make, like I said, is one, not pretending that they are people when they're not. Two, trying to have a chatbot do things that humans need to do. So in other words, just letting chatbots work on their own without any human guidance or intervention. And then three, trying to have the chatbot go across too much of the customer journey. And so you should focus your chatbots on whatever area that they're, in terms of the AI part of it. You can only stretch those guys so far in terms of the substantive area they're covering. So it's customer support. Let's have a chatbot for that. If it's on acquisition, let's have a chatbot for that. And then you can kind of get those chatbots learned up on those specific domains, rather than trying to stretch them across the entire cycle. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like you said, consumers don't like faking it. I mean, let's say if you're being upfront about that, okay, you're using the chatbot. Sometimes, they appreciate. Okay, so I mean, it's like it's answering something more than what a can do, and then they're pretty much, sure about what questions they'll have to ask. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing. I mean, to be honest about what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. That's the basic ideas. It's all about human interaction. You like people who are honest, you trust them, and
Yeah.
that builds trust in the brand. The brand's nothing more than the, it's just nothing more than like a personality. It's interacting with someone else. It's like you want to be able to trust it. You want them to be frank with you. You want to know there's a person back there and they're human beings. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little about, customer journey map and how to create an effective journey mapping, customer experience?
Yeah, sure. So like journey mapping is it's been around for a while now. But the idea behind it is to understand, to kind of when you get your functional roles within an organization, you start looking at your little piece of the elephant and not really understanding the overall view of the organization. So when we do journey mapping, in some marketing folks kind of view journey mapping as path to purchase. How can we get them to buy more stuff? And that's cool, but that's not how we go about doing it. Ours is more of a holistic approach to it, where it's more or less an organizational change initiative. So we're looking to, of course, most organizations are in business to make money, um, but you make money by delivering value. And so let's focus on that. So the first thing we do is sort of go out and get the internal take on how, Shiva, how do you think it works for DC Cap? What gets people started from the catalyst? What makes them decide to buy something from DC Cap? And then, okay, well, walk me through what happens next. Okay, well, then they decide to purchase, and who is it that's purchasing and who's not? And then once they get an interaction or they start doing business with DC Cap, what does that look like? And where are those moments of truth? And then at some point, maybe the project ends. What does that look like? And how does the billing look? And get that whole internal view from cradle to grave, if you will. And then we're like, okay. And by the way, within DC Cap, we get, Shiva and Karthik and like just different parts of the organization together, marketing, sales, all of them together, operations. And so, and through that discussion, there's usually a lot of, oh my, I didn't know we did it that way. I didn't know you told them that because we tell them this down here. And right there and then you have the organization communicating with one another, and you're making connections. Now, maybe a company the size of DC Cap, that's not as much of an issue, because you are connected. But when you get to scale, when you get to the size of Walmart, you could be in the same department and not know everybody. So making those connections across the organization, there's value right there. But we don't stop there. The next thing we do is we go out and we talk to customers and we say, okay, here's what's your experience? And we'll do it a lot of different ways. I like to do it qualitatively, just going out and talking with people and just listening and hearing them. Or in some cases, we'll go out and observe, how are they going about this experience? And then we'll come back and we'll compare the two. So, they said internally, here's what it looks like, and this is what your customers are saying. And we'll have a meeting, and right in that meeting, there's like oh my God, I didn't know that's why that's happening. And, or I didn't know that was occurring, or no, I didn't know that could occur. And so there's a good conversation right there and then, and we'll put together a journey map, a visual map. But a lot of people make the mistake. The map is the outcome. It's really the journey, right? The journey of making the journey map, because that's where the change happens, because internal stakeholders start recognizing where these opportunities lie, both from reducing friction to, oh, well, what we could do here is there's an opportunity, they're already here. Maybe we could suggest something else that they might want to purchase to go along with this, with an accessory or whatever. So there's also marketing opportunities in there too. And then out of that, sometimes we'll go into a quantitative stage, because say you're a bank and there's one or two people that complain about how hard it is to reorder checks. Is reordering checks a big issue? Where does that rank amongst all the things we need to work on? So what we do is we'll go out and do some kind of quantitative, usually a survey of their customers. And at the end, we work with a final session we call reconciliation and action planning, where we'll pull a chapter from design thinking. And in design thinking, one of the things we use is we are able to rank these things in terms of desirability. What does the customer want from sort of A to Z, and importance. And then, but that's not enough. If we just stop there, we would go out of business, right? Because if we just only thought about what the customer wants, and just, you know, design experiences to that, a restaurant would have a 1-to-1 ratio, waiters and waitresses to customers, right? That's not sustainable. So we need to not only look at what the customer wants, but how feasible is it to do that? So, you know, how much is it going to cost? What's the technical complexity of doing that? And then what's the viability? How much money are we going to make? How much money are we going to save? So it's those three things to rank all these things that we've discovered in a journey map. And that's our honey list. That's our list to go out and fix things, or design new things for, is desirability, feasibility, viability. And so from there, then we're not done, but we have a list of things we need to work on. Then we get cross-organizational groups together, and they start, you know, trying to solve these problems now that we know what they are. So that's in a nutshell sort of how it works.
Okay. So before we go, I've just got some quick questions. It doesn't
Sure.
have to be detailed, just brief about it. So can you tell us one advertisement that you actually liked? Can be B2B or B2C. Like, I mean, it can be digital or non-digital.
When advertising?
Yeah.
Jeez, that's a hard one. I think I think anything that has humor in it, it always appeals to me. I remember the one that kind of sticks in my mind. Remember the FedEx one where they're in a meeting and the one guy's like, "Hey, I have an idea. Why don't we send it by FedEx and we can save all this money?" And everyone ignores him. And then the executive says, "Wait a minute, I have an idea. Why don't we send it by FedEx?" And I was like, "That's a good idea." So the use of humor, I think, for me, an emotion, right, is pretty effective.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us one or two customer experience that you liked? I mean, one from the digital, maybe online, and other from maybe retail, non-digital.
Sure. Digital one, Amazon's amazing. You know, it's like the no hassle. You know, I ordered, like, I forget, like HP sauce, I think, and it took like 4 months to get here, and I'm like, it's taking forever. I don't want this, and no question asked. They just refunded me. It was super easy. The guy on the chat session was friendly. He didn't act like a bot, like we kind of goofing around or whatever. Super easy. So that's a great one. As far as an experience that's non-digital, you know, just short story, but I was at a Four Seasons, and we were out and we were coming back, Four Seasons Hotel, and I was just chit-chatting with someone else about how the bar had closed and there's no beer or whatever, and it was just making conversation. Well, there's someone behind me that worked for the resort overheard me, so the next night we came back and there's a 6-pack of like cold beer waiting in the room. So it wasn't a complaint. I didn't make a complaint. He just heard me and decided to do something special. And so I've told that story about 20, 30 times now. So I'm sure it had an ROI on it.
Cool. Yeah, that's good to hear, Dave. Thank you so much. And where do you want the listeners to go? Do you want to give them some links about you?
Yeah. If you want to learn more about Curiosity and what we do, we're at CuriosityCX.com. So give us a visit. I also publish out on Customer Think, which is Bob Thompson's site. So take a look there. And I have a book that's coming out. It's called the Field Guide to CX, a guide, no frills guide of getting stuff done. So I'm looking to get that published early next year. Everything goes well. So it's been really great talking with you today.
Cool. Yeah, for sure, Dave. I'll put all those links in the podcast description. And thank you so much for taking your time today, Dave. And you have a good day. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of Driven E-Commerce at Work podcast. This show is brought to you by TCCap, the company well known for its e-commerce product suites for B2B distributors. Make sure you subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Catch you guys very soon with another interesting episode. Until next time, see you.